Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to the video. So this video is going to be unscripted, and I'm going to be taking a deep dive on thumbnails and using Mr. Beast's thumbnails to illustrate my points. My name is Jonah. I run a thumbnail optimization agency, and I also work independently on thumbnails. Collectively, we have generated over 1 to 3 billion views in the agency and independently, and over $250,000 in revenue. If you're interested in working with me, there is a link that leads directly to my services in the description box of this video. I hope you find this video helpful. Let's get into it. When it comes to thumbnails, there's usually like 3 different things that I keep at the forefront when I'm creating the thumbnail. And there's so many nuances to the process to actually have an end result that's a thumbnail worth using. But it's obviously starts with the concept. This isn't the 3 points, but it obviously starts with the concept. Before that is, what's the concept angle that's going to be taken, like what's going to be shown on the thumbnail. And there's so many different ways to go about that, but usually it's very psychological, and you really have to understand the subject matter of your video to basically identify potential angles where you could target that angle and then exaggerate that angle. Psychological things. It's a psychological playing field. So you have to understand the subject matter of your video, and then you have to like brainstorm the ideas that make up that subject matter to find actual angles that are going to be coherent and relevant with that video and tie that to like the psychological aspect. So that's like a deep dive process. When it comes to optimizing the thumbnail along a concept, I mean, it could be any base concept just for the sake of getting the point out there. There's 3 things I keep in mind. Number 1 is I want this thumbnail to look as realistic as possible, and depending on the niche will depend on my color use. Because if it's like in a kid's niche, it's going to be brighter colors while keeping it realistic. If it's in more of a like a finance niche, then it's going to be more realistic, and then be very deliberate with the colors I use and the overall composition. And then say if it's in like a documentary style channel, not like Sunny V2, but something that like Tyler Oliveira, then I'm going to be honing in on probably as realistic as possible, and having some additions to that to basically bring the concept where it needs to be. But number 1 is realism. Number 2 is going to be basically focal points. I like to keep my thumbnails at 3 focal points max. 2, if you can have 2 focal points, more power to you. If you can achieve the same effect with 2 focal points, more power to you, because it's going to take less processing power for someone to see your thumbnail and understand the idea immediately. And plus, with 2 focal points, you have an opportunity to contrast larger areas of color on the thumbnail. And then number 3 is going to be color. So when it comes to color on thumbnails, it's not a super simple, like saturate the colors to make them pop out as much as possible. There's actually there's a realm of psychology in this process where, depending on the niche you're in, if you oversaturate a color, you could tell a thumbnail was designed, and it makes it more artificial. It gives an artificial impression. But if you know how to saturate specific colors on a thumbnail purposefully, you can basically remove that artificial aspect while making the thumbnail stand out. And a good example right here is like World's Deadliest Obstacle Course here. In the background, you see how the green trees aren't like highly saturated like the typical grass and Mr. Beast thumbnails. That makes it more realistic, takes the artificial aspect out of it, and makes you think that that's actually occurring where Mr. Beast is at that height in the mountains. And that's the best way I can put it. There's a lot of power in selecting specific assets and not changing them at all. Like maybe saturate the colors a little bit. Obviously, you can do a little bit in image manipulation to kind of like optimize the design to get the right, visibility and format. But that's pretty much the 3 things. It's going to be like I just covered, the colors, it's going to be 3 focal points, and it's going to be realism. So when you keep those all 3 at the forefront, and the thumbnail is optimized well visually, then that's literally the top of the game right there. And I guess to kind of elaborate on this, because a lot of people might be creators watching this, and they're not like, they don't understand thumbnail optimization at its core and like the design optimizations. Usually, and just to elaborate on that, to kind of bridge that gap, when it comes to optimizing thumbnails, like the visual aspects of thumbnails, the best thumbnails on YouTube in terms of performance, depending on the niche, are thumbnails that really capture an idea really well without like overloading the image visually. So the power in that is by creating like simple recognition cues, I could call it. So here's an example. So we have this thumbnail right here. You see how the sky and the distance is one central color, and it kind of looks like just, it almost takes up half the thumbnail, and it doesn't require you to identify specific details within that half of the thumbnail to know what it is. And the reason that works so well is because when you have this solid color on half of the thumbnail, it's going to stand out among other thumbnails on the YouTube user interface, because a solid color is kind of like your eye is going to be drawn to that, as opposed to something that has a lot of detail, because it's going to overwhelm. It has an overwhelming presence to it, like the solid color. And the same thing goes for the trees, like the trees below here. So the trees below him there take on like a solid color, not a completely solid color, because it's maintaining that realism, but you have those, like the color palette of green in all throughout that. And it's creating, there's two halves to this. You have the half with the blue sky in the distance, and you have the half with the green trees there. And that creates just a more powerful presence alongside other thumbnails on the user interface. And then here, this is another example. You see the trees in the background? You have like two distinct like color palettes there. You have that white, that grayish, gloomy like fog, and then you have the tree trunks, but they're all kind of like similar in design. It basically concentrates one recognition cue, so you can understand the background without it having specific segments of different detail. So it has one central recognition cue. And then here on this thumbnail, you have the ocean. You see how it's just going to be one central recognition cue? That's really powerful, and that's going to stand out really well on the homepage. So that's 100% the reason. That's like a top of the game strategy, is these recognition cues. So you have the water here, then you have the sand. You have basically two halves of the thumbnail. One half here is the sand, one half here is the water. Powerful recognition cues. They're going to stand out on the homepage because they concentrate one segment of detail over a large portion of the thumbnail. The same goes for this. See how the background is basically one, like it's not like there's not a lot of color detail here. We're talking just one basically solid color palette in the back. It's going to make it stand out. This goes for the same with basically all of like top thumbnails. It has, see this is the white solitary confinement room. It's all basically one color. And to give it like 3 dimensions of color, they added this wearing texture, and it also makes it more dramatic. And that's basically, I mean, that's all great thumbnails on YouTube. You see this background, how it's realistic. It puts them in a room, and it's one central color. It doesn't have like large amounts of detail. But granted, this part right here is an interesting addition. This is probably to like give you the psychological understanding that this is in a room. This might be a door. Like subconsciously, you're gonna be like, oh yeah, this corner right here is part of the door in the room inside of like a dog shelter. But yeah, that pretty much sums that up. I mean, that's basically it. It has to do with, it's about simplifying and concentrate. Simplify, concentrate, simplify, concentrate. And when you can simplify and concentrate, to one central idea, that's what's going to have the highest performance on YouTube. All right. So if you have any questions, guys, just leave them in the comments below. Thanks for watching. Peace.